Welcome, fans, to another live edition of the Cheap Heat Productions Pro Wrestling Podcast. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling, and we have a very popular returning guest to the show. The response from Deb's first interview on the show was so great in terms of fan interest in what exactly does it mean to have been the creative services director for WWF, WWE. We got into some of that, but we're going to dive into it a lot more in this show. And that, of course, would be a full career interview with, I'll introduce her properly, Ms. Debra Jaswaye, former creative director for WWF, WWE from about 1990 to 2005, just prior to her starting before WrestleMania 6 in Toronto. We're going to get into that in its entirety, of course, but as per usual and the custom, I have to introduce the man of the people, tireless public servant, and most of all, Mr. Cheap Heat himself, Maurice Shortall.
No need, Jack, but thanks again, and great to have a fellow Irish person back on with us here today, and that's where we're going to start now. So you're officially Irish now.
I am officially Irish. It took several years and a lot of paperwork, but here's my little Irish foreign birth registry certificate. So I'm officially a citizen of the Emerald Isle, as my grandmother would say. So this goes back to my mother's lineage. She was from Dublin, and she emigrated over actually to Canada before she made her way down here. So it's always been a dream to pursue that. Actually, I have to say, not to get into politics right away, but back during the George Bush administration, which was pre-Obama, that's when I really started thinking about getting out of this country. And I figured, you know what? It's like I got to go somewhere where it's sovereign, and never realizing I could pursue my roots in my homeland. So Irish arms were open and welcome, and so I am officially a citizen. So I'm going to look you up, Morris, when I come to town. You owe me a pint or two.
A few pints, a few Jamesons when you get over here.
Yeah, there you go.
I roll.
Wanted to start off with a bit of a timely question, and you bring a unique historical perspective to this one, and that would be the issue of Hulk Hogan in terms of his less than warm reception at the Netflix debut of Raw. And then just this past week, he was supposed to make a return to Saturday night's main event, a show that he really put on the map, so to speak, along with Vince, of course, but then pulled out a couple of days before due to family commitments. So wanted your take on that, having, been there during, the so-called golden era of Hulkamania. Is there a rationale for that pops in your head, and is there a place for Hulk Hogan in the company moving forward?
This is, of course, my personal opinion. I just think Hogan has always been a douchebag, and I'm just going to say it. I think he's been a low-rung talent. I don't, as far as, a wrestler, he probably has one or two moves, right? And his career, and this is, again, my opinion. I don't want to let people down because people have him as a hero, and I understand that. But just knowing how he's, handled himself throughout the years that he's been in business, this is a business for him, period. So he's going to go where the opportunities are, if it's with, NWO, WCW, wherever it is, right? Makes sense. But as far as what he's doing now in his career, as far as dipping his toe in politics and getting heavy-handed in our current administration, again, it's seeking the limelight. It's a cheap pop for our the candidate at the time. But we also have Linda McMahon becoming involved, and she'll be probably Senate approved as our education secretary, which makes no sense, but whatever, because they're going to dismantle that department anyway. So to see Hogan and see him get that crappy, reception, I think the fans have spoken. I think he's really fallen out of grace with a lot of people because I think he just became a bit of a sellout. Not a bit of a sellout. He's a sellout. I mean, I just don't think he's ever been one that people can use the word integrity when you talk about Hulk Hogan. I mean, you can say that about The Rock. You can say that about a lot of these like big superstars, but Hogan, I don't know. It's my opinion. I don't think he'll ever hear this, but I just think he lived his life dirty, and I think he deserves a negative response to it. I mean, you look at this, look at his career, and look what kind of like publicity he's had, and bad publicity is still publicity, but he's had some pretty ugly stories about him, and I honestly. I've always thought he was douchey, and I was not surprised when he got a negative pop because for the state of where we are in this country right now, if you were on that side of it, you deserve a negative pop. So I'm glad that he got the boos. He deserved it. That's my opinion. Sorry if anyone who's a big Hogan fan, but he's a douchebag. I'm sorry.
But do you think that he will have, or is there a spot for him given the business relationship with?
There's money to be made. If there's money to be made, if he could bring in the ratings, then why wouldn't they use him, and why wouldn't he use them? I'm sure it's going to work for both of them. Why not?
It's his beer. His beer line.
What is he even promoting right now? Is he making movies? No, he's never made good movies. So, he just needs a pop. He needs some attention. So sure, he'll come back. Why not? He's probably thinking he's on the right side of things because, he backed the winning horse in this shitty race that we just ran. And
it's actually, Debra, it's his beer. His beer is the new sponsor of beer.
That's stupid. It's stupid.
But I think if you
another bear, it's like it just wants to slap his name on something.
I made a point to you a few weeks back, and I was just saying, like, how come the Undertaker didn't get the reaction that Hogan got? But then I remembered the stuff that you referred to in his past, being racist against his daughter's partner or ex-partner.
Yeah, how they handled his son within that auto accident, and it was like you read into all the stories because I followed it. Of course, I followed over the years. It's like there's not a lot of redeeming qualities about Hogan that I can recall. So I mean, I don't like to kick somebody, but he's just never been my guy. So if you were to say this about like The Rock or Mick Foley or any of these like John Cena, it's like they have integrity. That's the way I look at those guys. I don't look at Hogan like that at all.
Would you look at Undertaker and Kane in the same way as Hulk Hogan?
I have I won't talk about it. I have my stories about Undertaker, and he's not my favorite guy either. I can't. But it's just it's like a moral thing. I mean, these guys are on the road. This is going back way, way, way back. But I mean, none of them are perfect. So it's like I kind of look like that, like ew, a little. I won't get into it, but I don't think that. Look, we all make mistakes, okay? And for that kind of business, who am I? I shouldn't really hold them to that high of a standard. Like Vince McMahon, it's like, is it surprising that he's who he is and what he's done? So again, it's like I'm not saying it's okay to be that way, but that's the circus that they run, and that's just the lifestyle. So it is what it is,
And Deb, it's germane that you mentioned Vince because one of the very smart fans of this broadcast and on the interviews on the Hannibal TV, Ibzan Aurora has asked, how was Vince towards you? Thoughts of him, I guess, as a person before the scandal?
I worked with Vince up until just before I think he turned 60. So you can imagine me knowing him 15 years prior. So it's like, 45 into the mouth. So he was like at the top of his game. And I always looked at Vince like he was like the end all be all. Like he was a god, You know, he was scary, but he was cool. You saw him on TV one day, and then you'd be in the office with him the next day. If you rode in the elevator with him, you wanted to die. But he had so much charisma, and he carried himself like the man that you saw on TV, like Mr. McMahon. And I would meet with him either as a representative of creative services, who my area was promotion and marketing. So we would sit around the table with him, and someone from merchandising would go over like the latest T-shirt designs, and someone from licensing would talk to him about, like, I don't know, video games or something like that. And then it would be my turn. I would say, this is what our new concept is going to be for this month's pay-per-view, or this is a spread that we're going to show you how this new show launch is going to look in our magazine. So he was always like easy to talk to with me, never flirtatious. Because I think I just carry myself in such a way. I think I've talked about this before. I'm not one of those people, you know. And I was married the whole time I was working there, mostly. But I remember when the first article came out in Playboy magazine, where he admitted that he'd been caught cheating, and I was in a meeting with him, just he and I, and it just came out, and I just remember looking at him like. It's like, oh, really? It's like, you let me down. I thought you were like Vinnie Mac Daddy, and we're all like, yeah, everybody, you're so awesome. And now you're just like, you're just another dude that's like can't keep in his pants. But at the same token, it's like all that power, unchecked power. It's like, why not? You know, it's like it goes with the territory. So I don't speak about him and Linda's marriage, whatever they're doing. But I just remember that time I was like, I looked at him differently. And then it was like, all right, that's what we're doing, you know?
Well, he did call himself a genetic jackhammer. So that's got a,
yeah, okay.
That buries the secret right there.
You know what's crazy? Did any of you watch the autobiography about him on Netflix?
Yes, indeed.
Right. So now I'm watching this, and it's so extreme that I almost started thinking, is this a work? Like, did he, like, then it's like, oh, it's on Netflix. I'm like, does he have a connection? Is he making this stuff up to seem even, like, weirder than it is? So you almost think, like, none of this can be true. Like, and then I'm like, that's how I'm trained to think now, because I've been in the industry for so long. Because they started talking about some of his storyline pitches about, like, he impregnated Stephanie or something. It's like, whoa, what are you doing? And I'm thinking, maybe this is a work, like he's throwing out this extreme stuff to think, well, then none of this can be true, that all that stuff about him in the papers is like so inflammatory. It's got to be a work. That's how conditioned we are to think about wrestling, that we have to question everything. That's crazy.
So you're a pretty creative person, and so I just want to get your opinion on that Netflix piece. It just looked like a glamour piece for me, for WWE, with a few scandals sprinkled in between.
Wait, I'm sorry, what was that?
I just said the Netflix production. It just seemed like a glamour piece with just a few little pieces of scandal sprinkled in between.
I don't know if it was released maybe, or production ended when the story really came out, all the information. So they kind of alluded to him like he stopped production or he stopped speaking to us when this happened. But who knows what the timeline was. Again, it's like I almost wonder. It's like how heavy-handed he was in that production. I question everything because nothing is real. We question. There's no reality. I don't understand anything anymore. Right?
Everything is a work.
Exactly, and that's why they like Hogan is on the stage at the Republican convention, and he's and Linda McMahon has a seat at the table, and it's insanity. That's what we come to. It's all a work.
Since you brought him up again, and I don't want to spend the entire interview on Hogan, but Anthony is asking, this is a layup. What do you think about Punk's promo and calling Hogan out? We've talked about this on Riders Wrestling Review last week. Are they trying to? They can't be trying to build something here. What do you make of that? Where is the as my friend Ben Hameen would say, where is the payoff in this? What do you think of that?
I don't know. Maybe it's just strike now while the iron's hot. Like get it while it's there. It's like he's got some heat. It's still sort of in the news, not too much. I'm going to just throw a light on because it's dark. Sorry about that.
I think CM Punk just hates Hogan, as far as I am aware, going back for a long time.
Okay, I couldn't tell you anything about current wrestling. Yeah. And actually, when I try to watch current wrestling, I have no idea what's going on. It's entirely different. I will say again, I absolutely love what they've done with the divas. Like that is the best thing that they could. Because I mean, I just talked to somebody today whose daughter has gone to like live events, and he's so proud that he goes, I didn't think I want to have daughters because I wanted them to grow up to be wrestling fans, and this girl's like an avid like fan, and it's like, and she's so pumped about when the women wrestling comes out. So it's like, if I will say one good thing about that industry, they did the right thing when it came to like women in sports. They did a really good job, because I know there's like a lot of avid like fans now just because of the women. So that's a good props on them.
Yeah, and a lot of young women looking at them that are going to be aspiring to get into what was once a very dangerous business. But
sure.
because you touched on it then, because you worked in an era where women were treated completely differently, is there anything that springs to mind from your time in there that you were just like didn't like, or anything that springs to mind from a production point of view when you were working there that involved the women?
Well, again, it was just so easy for, I think, women to either lose respect, because if you again treated the men, whether they worked there or they were talent, as somebody you were gushing over and or asking for that's the first way to lose your job, period. And I don't know why it's like different. Like the men could pose and take pictures and, hey, can you sign this for my kid? But if a woman did it, it would definitely been taboo. Like you have to maintain that sense of composure and professionalism, which again I always did, and I saw way too many people blow it and like literally lose their jobs because they were stupid. I mean, again, it's times are different now. I think we all know, again, I can't speak for what goes on backstage at these events now. I would imagine it's still a sense of, that male dominant, alpha male, which we're seeing that all over the country anyway, which is why, sports like wrestling probably are even more popular. It's like that dominant testosterone, take it out in the ring, and it's ridiculous. But that's what we're seeing. We're raising our young men, to have this alpha male, complex, and that's gonna have repercussions down the line too. So, wrestling doesn't help, I guess, but it's really good to see those strong female characters, and that goes a long way. So good job.
Ibzan has another question that I actually had on the list previously to ask you, because the topic of Gorilla Monsoon, Gino Morella, has come up because Brian R. Solomon is doing another one of his who you were a guest on his show, is doing a really, I mean, I'm a huge fan of his book on the Sheik, Blood and Fire, and he's got one coming on Gorilla. Did you have any interactions with him during your time in the company?
I was so young in the company then. I mean, I was the low rung on the ladder when he passed, but I remember hearing about it, and I remember there was I can't remember if there was like a replica or something, that had to do with Andre. I just remember hearing about it. He was one of the good guys. I'm trying to think, is Bobby Heenan still alive?
No, Bobby passed about, and somebody will correct me here, he passed about a few years ago, 5 to 6 years ago, perhaps more. Unfortunately, he had a long struggle with throat cancer, and they were very tight.
I have memories of being like at a bar with them after a live event. It had to be a WrestleMania. And when everybody was like dancing, there was like a Rolling Stones cover band, and those guys were like, Heenan and Gorilla, like all dressed up after the event, and we were getting the party on. And I just remember like it was like a Rolling Stones cover band, and I remember them having like a great time. Again, it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but it's amazing that whole generation is almost gone. All those like Pat Patterson and Howard Finkel and Gene Okerlund. Gene Okerlund died too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
It's a lot of, that's a whole generation of them almost gone.
Yeah, last year was a very rough year for the loss of legends in the pro wrestling business, as well as the year before that. You're right. It's that's why I admire Brian Solomon's work in that he's dedicated to preserving the history that is, as you say, it's fastly leaving us. But I wanted to ask you though, for those who weren't aware of, I mean, as we talked off air, folks are aware of what the term creative services is, or actually the fans that have been long-term fans, but we've had a lot of questions about what exactly does that entail, and then one question in particular was what would a day look like in your job when you're interacting with other departments, such as a booking meeting, that sort of thing. What exactly? I know that's probably difficult to encapsulate.
Okay.
But what does that look like?
I hear that's a really good question. Okay, granted, I can't speak for the department now, creative services, but back when I started, we were actually called the art department, and because we did so much creative for every aspect of the industry, that we changed our name to creative services. And sometimes that was something where we had one person on staff that did drawings of all of the new characters. Some of the designers would come up with logo designs that would be used for, say, their T-shirts or merchandise, something that might be used on television. So we had one sort of division that was just devoted to merchandise, and they did all the T-shirt and merchandise design. And then we would have another group that was devoted to, say, licensing. So we would have, say, all the images of the characters. This is going like in the early days where they would send those images out to, say, coloring books and toy companies to like reproduce it. So one part of that creative services department would oversee how that artwork was used and check that it was used properly. Then we had another group, which was I was involved in. This was promotion and marketing and live events. So, I mean, back in my very early days, when I talked about my experience with Freddie Blassie, I would just literally typeset the copy that was used to announce the like rotation of the events, and that gets slipped into the programs. We would work on all the live event posters, all the pay-per-view campaigns, and this is an interesting story about how we worked within the company. Every month, back then it was once a month. Now it's more. Yeah. We had one pay-per-view event a month. So we would do a brainstorming and kickoff, and it would be like, okay, Vince would tell us who's going to be featured. And this is maybe like 2 or 3 months out. So we'll know who that main event talent is. And then we'll go back as a creative service, all of us, whatever group you were in, we would meet in the conference room, and that would be our brainstorming session. And we would say, okay, well, we know that they're having it. Let's just say it's in Las Vegas, and it's at Caesar's Palace. I think this is one of the last brainstorming sessions I sat in on. And I was like, well, what if it was something like, Gladiator, and you've got the thumbs up and the thumb down, and maybe they're all wearing and it's like, and you just start brainstorming. It's like, yeah, we could do that. And then that could lead to this. And then we'll have a couple of like maybe 5 solid ideas. And then our artists go back and they'll do either rough, like, maybe it's a sketch, maybe it's a quick, like, done on a computer, like roughly. And then we can show Vince, say, 5 concepts. So I will meet with Vince and say, okay, here's our rough ideas for this next pay-per-view campaign. And usually the logo is already designed because we'll use it like SummerSlam. But maybe if it's SummerSlam in New Orleans or something, they'll change the colors to, feel like SummerSlam in New Orleans. So they'll change the colors, or they'll add a little fleur-de-lis, that sort of thing. So we'll customize the logo. Maybe we'll show him, a rough idea of the talent, what it looks like, and he'll look at 5 different concepts or more, and he'll say, I want that one. And it's like, okay, you're the man. He makes a decision. Or he'll say, I like that, but I want to see something bigger, or change that, or I don't like that color. He was very hands-on with how things look, very much right down to all the details. And I'd be like, all right. And then we go back, and then you have to actually create it. So sometimes that involved having a photo shoot. So you'd have to contact talent relations, find out who's, if that talent that you're featuring is available. Can they come into Stamford and do a photo shoot at the office? Or do we have to go on the road? Do we have to do a photo shoot backstage? And then what does that entail? Do we need props? And then we'll do the photo shoot, and then we'll bring it back, put it on our, Adobe software programs, and then we'll, create the whole poster. We'll add all the typography, and then that's sent out for posters that used to hung in like your cable offices. It would get into our magazine. So we had a whole separate publishing department that did all the magazines. So that artwork that we created just for that pay-per-view event would go on the video game, it would go into the magazine. Sometimes we would use some of that artwork on the arena chairs that you would buy if you got ringside seats. You'd take home that chair and have the commemorative logo on there. So we designed everything. We were graphic communications. So anything that the WWE was communicating to the public, we were creating it visually. The only thing that we didn't do was like TV graphics. That's a whole different creative department. So when you talk about creative, a lot of times you'll think it's us, but technically when they say creative, as in like the creative sucks, it's because the TV writing at the time sucked, or it's just a general, it just wasn't going over. The ratings were down. So that's creative, but we're creative services. We were the graphic designers, the art directors, the creative directors that put it all together so that you can actually graphically communicate to the public who we are, what we're doing on any given day, whether it was merchandise, promotional materials, licensing, product we were selling. Or sticking a logo on a vending machine down the hallway, or creating a logo, or it's going to be on a billboard in Times Square. Like we just did it all. When we launched a restaurant, a themed restaurant in Times Square, it was not only we had to come up with a name, we had to come up with a logo, we had to come up with work with interior designers to set the look of the place, down to creating the cocktail napkins. So creative services, everything that involves a visual, put it that way. And I worked with a lot of really talented art directors, designers, retouchers, photographers, and we were all under one roof. We did not outsource anything for the most part. And again, that was then. The industry's changed a lot over the years, but I still am in contact with. And then there's not only the people that do the work, the graphic design work, but you've also got all of the like project managers, that people that like deal with all the vendors that get stuff actually out the door and printed and delivered. And I have a very good friend that's worked, I think she's been there 50 something years. God knows, she's probably worked on every single WrestleMania, and she always made sure the ring skirts are there on time. If there was mic cubes, they were done. It's like you handle all the details. Anything you see that's visual, that's printed, came from creative services. They're a mighty, mighty team, and we work months out. So sometimes, something will happen. Like we're literally on the press, and that talent that's featured in that poster, because he's supposed to be the main event, didn't sign his contract. Or in the case of, I can't remember who it was, might have been Brock Lesnar. Somebody broke their neck. Like somebody was like, oh, well, they're not going to be on the card, so stop the presses, and we literally have to come up with something brand new, and it has to be done like tonight. So it was a pretty high pressure place. So the great crew, we were a great team. We had so much fun. It's not like you would think now everybody kind of gets behind their computers and just types away and does a little like business. We were like always in each other's spaces. We were always helping each other out. It didn't matter who you were. I was on my hands and knees cutting things that need to get cut. We were such a great team because we loved what we were doing, and we grew up doing it. So we evolved with the company. So we were always there, like no matter what. Sometimes we made like, cards for Linda to give to Vince or something, like, personalized stuff like that. Did I tell it? Maybe I told this story on another podcast. Stop me if I didn't. But I remember I had the flu, and I worked Christmas, like just before Christmas, because Vince wanted to give Linda some coupons for Christmas. Did I tell you this?
No.
Yeah. Like what a shit. That was his gift to her. He was like, it was just, and I remember I had the flu and I had to go into the office. I remember having like a blanket, and I was the only one there. And I had to make these little coupons, and I still have them. I found them. But they were like, one was like, 1 hour of uninterrupted conversation. And another one was like 1 romantic dinner somewhere at some restaurant. And someone was like 1, like moonlight cruise on our boat. I'm like, so that's what creative services did. It's like, if you needed something made, we did it. So that was, we were just a little in-house art department. But yeah, that was.
You should save those and put them in the Smithsonian, especially if it's like one free back rub or something.
And I have gotten contacted by people that are like, want to, buy some of the like artwork that we have. That's literally stuff that I did by hand. Like and I look as a professional graphic designer, I'm like, ugh, it's so old and hokey and old school, but it's literally one of a kind because nothing was digital. So we have, we made it by hand. God knows how many things are actually printed. So yeah, some of that stuff is kind of collectible. So I'm holding on to it for now.
I don't think as much. I don't want to say effort because I don't want to be disrespectful to anyone that's working in that department there now. But it doesn't seem to be an emphasis on like wrestling was with colors and different things going on. I remember like you mentioned Brock Lesnar, and there was a SummerSlam there. I think it was 2002, where they went to a beach. They shot a trailer with a fake shark.
Yeah,
things like that.
Yeah,
it doesn't really happen anymore. It's just here's the event. Everything just kind of looks the same, in my opinion.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, we had to like reinvent something new every month. So every pay-per-view was like a theme, and you had to have all these like off-the-wall ideas. Or sometimes it was just like, Hell in a Cell, here's a cage, make sure they face each other. And then you would just go down to the photo department and say, I need a profile of this guy and that guy, and it would work. So we can make something out of nothing as long as it was telling the story that Vince wanted to tell 2 months out. That made sense in the storyline that he's building in his head that we have no idea. We just got to trust him. So he would give us the talent, and that was all we got. And then we would know like a location, and maybe we could work that into it.
I think Jack, I was laughing when you were talking there because I was looking at the comment section. Have you seen them, Jack? You're going to have to just bring some of them up there just to show. I think Debra get a laugh out of this.
Yeah, it's
maybe the first one there. It gets progressively worse as it goes along. But
you've really got this. Can't be new to you, Deb. When I think it's fair to say that wrestling fans are a unique bunch, and they're quirky, and they come out of nowhere with angles. And I would say this would be one of them. I hate it when they cut out armpits in medium or close-up shot. I want to see the female wrestlers smooth, sweaty pits.
Yeah.
After the match, and they pan up, and that's infuriating. And then he puts over
I bet you do.
talent, Alexa Bliss, Sable, Trish. Shout out to her fellow Canadian Sasha, Mandy Rose, Becky, and other had top-tier armpits. So that's kind of, I think that's more a TV production sort of thing, but being a creative person, you can appreciate the spirit behind the comment, perhaps.
And for print, normally you don't want to cut someone off at the knees. So it's either above the knees, usually it helps to be above the knee because things look a little like you look amputated when you're cut. That's the only thing I could say about print. But yeah, armpits, whatever floats your boat. That's cool.
Yes. Wanted to ask about, I no doubt you've seen that Titan Towers was recently sold. And that was quite an iconic building for many of us of several generations that followed the product. I take it you plied your trade there, or at least visited?
The new building I was in the tower since day one. We actually, we started, they had a small office building in a different part of Stamford, and they were all housed in that office building. And then when I started, we were like the overspill. So we were in a second floor in the building across the street. So if I had to do anything or meet with anybody, I had to cross the street. Then we all joined together when we went into the tower, and that had like the great, like the fitness, the gym was gorgeous down there. Beautiful cafeteria. They had a great like patio space on the roof. Vince and Linda's office were kind of like on the top floor, but like on opposite ends. So it would be like Linda's wing and Vince's wing. But I haven't been to the new building. I mean, it's gorgeous from what I can see from the outside. It's a short walk from the train station, which is really convenient for the people that work there. I will try and get there because I do have a good friend that's still there. So I need to meet up. But yeah, the tower, if those walls could talk, right?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, especially in recent years with all the information about, various scandals involving Mr. McMahon, just in terms of the atmosphere there, maybe it depended on what department you were in, but was it a healthy work environment from your perspective? And did you see any of these off the wall, not to quote Lance Storm, but offbeat shenanigans that we've all heard about?
Wild West, it was wrestling. There was no guardrails. This was early, this was the 90s, early 90s. This was before you had sexual harassment training, and all of those like buzzwords didn't even exist. So anything went. I mean, look, I'm not saying that people were, disrespectful and touchy-feely when they shouldn't have been. That stuff wasn't going on, at least not to my knowledge. But again, it was like such a fun, creative circus that you were part of, that it was just like, even though we wore suits and ties and women wore, pantyhose and skirts, because this was the 90s and there were still dress codes. We were pretty buttoned up, but still, it was like, you couldn't help but, be kind of off the wall, what we did, day in and day out. So it was definitely like a fun, circus atmosphere. You didn't take yourself too seriously. It was definitely wild. It was definitely wild in a good way. I did not know, what was going on behind closed doors. I think a lot of us didn't know. I mean, you could kind of speculate, but I mean, I did hear rumors about other things. I think everybody heard about the ring boy rumors and that sort of thing, because it becomes, unfortunately becomes a joke, and you start referring to someone, you're a ring boy, which is cruel, but so it spreads, people talk. But as far as the only dumb stuff I saw was just women being stupid and gushing over talent and losing their jobs, which is a waste. And again, it's I wouldn't say it was a healthy environment. If you were, not smart, it probably wasn't a safe place to work. But if you, like me, I hold my own. I have a certain set of morals, I guess, and values. So I managed to slide past any questionable activities, and I made it to the top. I did fairly well there, but I wouldn't say it was a healthy environment. But
fair enough.
Yeah.
One of the questions, sorry to cut you off, Maurice, but one of the questions that I personally took heat for during your last interview that I didn't ask was your working around or with or whatever capacity with one of the most controversial figures in wrestling history. I don't think that's an exaggeration. I personally think he's a genius in his work. I think he's contributed a lot, and that would be one Vince Russo.
Vince, I honestly, I thought it was pretty cool. I liked Vince. I mean, I never had, although Vince was in obviously a different department. Okay, we were creative services. He was on the other end. Okay, he was more of the magazine and the new media part. And I know he was a tough boss, but he's also a creative genius, in my opinion. I mean, he's got a big ego, but they all have big egos. I did some cool work with him. The coolest thing that he and I did together was when Undertaker was going really dark, kind of goth, and Vince had me do all this research for his character when he turned that way, and it was fun. I talked to someone who follows Aleister Crowley and Satanism, and I found a ton of research so that they can apply that to his character when they were developing it. And then there was one live event where Undertaker had to roll his eyes back and talk in tongue, and I had to actually it was in Ohio, and I had to go to Ohio and give him a little script that I wrote, and I couldn't. I had to make something up so I think I pulled some verse from a Jimmy Page, Robert Plant album, and I just kind of spelt it out, and I had to kind of like review it with him. I go, you have to say this. Try to roll your R's if you can. And he was not happy about it. And I think he fudged it, but I think he took it seriously and he did it. But yeah, that was like me and Vince Russo worked on it together. I used to think I was probably like a goth girl, back in that day. And I was like, yeah, this is cool. I know some people, and I set up some interviews, and I got my information about like Freemasonry, and a lot of these like things that they were trying to infuse into that like cult, dark goth storyline that they're working on. So I was like, that was fun. And I actually still have the piece of paper that has what the information that I had faxed over to Vince, and it has a little script that I have for Undertaker. So I'm going to find that, and I'm going to share that.
Well, that is a major exclusive that Aleister Crowley was somehow incorporated into the WWF at the time, given Jimmy Page's affection for Aleister Crowley. That's a great story. And you said the Undertaker wasn't all that receptive, despite playing the dead man and all that.
I think he's like, hey, you have to say this in an hour when you cut your video, and you have to roll your R's. And he was like, like really? But I think he did it okay. I wish I had saved it to show you guys, but it was maybe like 3 or 4 lines. I know I still have it on a piece of paper somewhere. Yeah.
I think down the line we'll do a show with you, and what we can do is we can pull me and Jack from the screen, and you can talk. You can show about certain things. That'd be really cool. I think
that'd be so cool. I have some really good artifacts. I bring things in. I started. I'm a teacher now, so I'm teaching graphic design at a high school. It's a trade school, and I go in and say, hey, I started in a trade school because I went to a trade school too. And I studied graphic design. I work for World Wrestling Entertainment, for 15 years. And they're like, their eyes go wide. And then, so there's such an interest in graphics as it is. And then to be able to say, yeah, and if you're really good at it, you can even work for, World Wrestling Entertainment. And they're like, yeah. So it matters. If it inspires them to stay focused and, achieve it. Yeah, that's great. I've got a couple of big wrestling fans, in fact, in my classes.
It's one of the biggest companies in the world as well. But what I wanted to ask about that what was your most challenging day working for WWF?
Oh gosh, there wasn't a not challenging day because we worked on incredible deadlines, and it was a machine. So once you got the go ahead from Vince, you had a deadline to get your photography done, to get your artwork done, to get everything done, run it through, legal and proofreading, and get it out to the printer. Tough days, definitely when Owen died. That was I think we talked about that. That was brutal. I think any day that you went back to the office after finding out that one of our superstars passed away was a tough day, because it's not just our product. It is our family. We are all on that, pretty much almost we're all on the same payroll, I guess, when you look at it. So yeah, those were tough days. And then I think I had one instance where it was a stop the presses, where we had to literally work through the night on a pay-per-view where we had to pull someone off. We had to replace it with The Rock. I think Rock was fairly new with us. It might even be the first time he was on a pay-per-view poster. And I think all we had to work with was some promo shots of him wearing those real ugly silk shirts that he used to wear with the patterns. And I think we had to pull one of those.
Still wear those.
Yeah, he probably does. He could afford better shirts. But I mean, anything that we did there was hard work, but it was very rewarding. I mean, we all felt like we were part of something that was a global phenomenon. And for me to be, at my age, way beyond those years, to kind of enjoy a little bit of celebrity is weird, but it's kind of cool. Because I mean, I look back at the work that we did, and it's to me, I'm embarrassed because we were doing it by hand. We didn't have the software and the equipment and the technology now, but it's so close to the real product. It was like that's Vince McMahon telling us exactly what to do, and us running it back to our offices and doing it. It was very, very small and simple. It only turned into a big scale when it was all finished. But It was a team of people.
As Morris pointed out, we're talking about it now X number of years later, and the product now most definitely you can argue is sort of following the UFC model to the extreme, where everything's kind of bland. And the work that you did, certainly, I mean, when you mention things, we all go, yeah, we all remember it. So whether it was technologically, whatever you want to call it or not, it certainly was memorable.
Memorable. Well, it's nice to hear. It's very nice to hear.
I compare it to, like, I like watching old movies and I like watching old horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
I think about the things that they done in the 80s and 90s and the sets they built and the puppeteering they use and things like that. And then I watch something modern and it's CGI and it just doesn't look authentic. That's kind of what way I kind of look at your work then as well.
Yeah, I am impressed with what you see like on their live productions, though. I mean, you can't. I mean, that's pretty incredible. That's it. Yeah. It
looks great, but I just don't think it's colorful enough, and I just don't think it's as character based as it should be.
Interesting. Yeah, it is. If it's kind of generic, it probably costs more money to make it more character specific, right? So just keep it all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's a heater question from one of the viewers asking about if you ever spoke up about the racism in the WWE during the years 90 to 2005. Mexicools in 2003 to 2004 is an example. DX, that skit with the black phasing.
I think there's a misconception here about this person may have come in late into the interview. He must think that you were involved in the TV production side of things.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like not saying even if I did see it, I didn't like it. But we're not writing TV. We're not involved in. God, if that were the case, then there would be no Katie Vick, right? Like if I had a say in it. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things I grimace about, and I'm sure a lot of people aren't proud of, but. That's show business, baby. I hate to say it. And they worked it. They had no guardrails. They got away with it. And that's probably why they are as popular as they are, because they did it without it, any repercussions. They just went for it. I don't blame them.
Yeah. Is there anything that comes to mind?
Right.
Is there anything that comes to mind where you thought, oh, that's a bit too much? Or was there one point where you said, oh, that's too far? Or
Katie Vick. Katie Vick. There was what was her name? Sexy chocolate with the glove. May.
The hand.
All right. I don't have to say anything else. Come on.
I don't think anyone took that seriously, though. Really, did they? Surely not.
It's fun. It was funny. It's humor. It's but really, but you never knew what to expect. We never knew what to expect when we were watching the show. It was like, holy crap! And then you waited the next day. It's like, is there going to be fallout from this? And there was, but that's good entertainment that people are talking about us. So they didn't care. They wrote it all the way to the bank. I don't blame them. And again, you couldn't go anywhere back in the day when, where everyone had a t-shirt that was a wrestling slogan on it. Everyone was doing X chops. I mean, it was like we were in everyone's conversation. We were on popular, on television shows and cross promotions, and we were on our game. So it was like if it fed into culture, and if it piss people off. I wish that wasn't the case, but that's how they became as popular as they were, and that's success, I guess.
Crash TV. This may have been the end of your tenure, but last night on my Great North Wrestling podcast, I interviewed Nick Eugene Dinsmore, who was a fabulous talent, still is, and well known for his character that got a lot of heat in terms of the mainstream media saying it was a portrayal of a mentally challenged person, and they kind of left that ambiguous. And Nick said there was all that hype and controversy, and then when it got over the way that it did, that it showed this individual really overcoming the odds and having success. I made a mental note to ask you about your thoughts on that and any involvement in the creative services aspect of that, because he had a particular look about him and presentation.
It doesn't even ring a bell. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Do you know when it was that he was?
He signed, he was in the developmental system for several years, but had a really high profile run starting in 2004 with William Regal and Triple H and Eric Bischoff. He was right at the top of the.
It was probably like just I was transitioning out.
Okay.
So he was the mental handicap a work, or was it real?
Yeah, the way that he explained it, he wanted to. Vince thought it was like, let's pitch the Rain Man. There he is, the Rain Man.
Yep, thank you. I remember.
Wrestling. Yep. But he's an actual fabulous technician and very, very skilled guy in the ring, and he basically it was a collaborative idea between himself, another legend by the name of Rip Rogers, and Vince McMahon. But it got a ton of mainstream publicity at the time and controversy.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, as long as he was in on it, like it was his, it wasn't forced on him to do it, and I'm sure he probably put a lot into that character development. I mean, it's just like preparing for an acting role, right? You're becoming something. So, I mean, I'm sure he made it believable. And I mean, as long as it was respectful, and I don't know if that even exists in wrestling. I can't speak on it because I don't remember any of the storyline with him, but I do remember him. And just knowing that if he was responsible partly for that persona, then it wasn't forced on him, then I'm sure he probably brought his all to it to make it great. So, I mean, I don't know if it deserves, a lot of heat. And he's saying he evolved and actually like overcame these handicaps in his storyline.
The heels were mean and et cetera, and treated him badly, and he triumphed in the end over.
He loves it like an underdog story, but.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, as long as they don't exaggerate it and make it sound, overly done, I don't think I would even have had a problem with it. Because I think it's sort of like, I hate to say it, but it's representation, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I think we're getting more, I think it's maybe easier to talk about that now than it was even back then. That it's important. I mean, as long as it's done respectfully. And again, who knows how wrestling would handle that, but I would hope that they did. Yeah, I think it's an interesting character right there. So
I think he alluded last night in the interview when I was watching it, Jack, that pretty much WWE things were coming down on him from the mainstream media, so they put him in the ring with The Rock 1 week on Raw, and then everything was forgotten about.
Yeah, all is forgiven.
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny how that happens. We also wanted to look into your thoughts on, now that the WWE is a corporate entity, and they're becoming, in my opinion anyway, and others, more UFC like, and it seems anyway that the attention to the uniqueness of characters, etc., is not what it used to be. What part do you think your department played in that branding of the WWF, WWE, when it really exploded into the national scene, that perhaps would be difficult to replicate today, if you understand what I'm saying?
That's unfortunate, because again, it was always characters, like almost like cartoon characters, where they would have their kind of goofy little costumes and their names. Like I'm thinking of remember Tugboat, woo, and you would have like a little signature move. You'd have your little Tugboat-esque costume. You wore a little sailor hat, and you were Tugboat. And then when that all, and so it was like kind of fun, right? Like, especially for younger audiences, it's more of a cartoon superhero sort of esque, like, they have their unique personalities. And then when that all got stripped away during like the Attitude Era, and it became more, real and aggressive, and you kind of lost that little bit of, I think, Hollywood-esque creative part of it, where it's, characters are more defined, and have more, they stand on their own. And now it's just a group of athletes that are, that's I guess that is missing. That's a huge difference, huh? I didn't, and I haven't followed it, so I don't know, but I'm assuming that you don't have any like unique personalities anymore. It's just, it's men and women.
Yeah, I mean, the basics are there. There's a personal issue. There's a program, but in terms of the, we're all sitting here around, except for Morris. He's a baby, but those of us of a certain demographic, look back on that really fondly. In this channel, my other channel, the love that folks have for the business of your tenure in the WWF WWE is because a lot of the stuff that you brought to the table with, color, characters, branding, and that it's now the business evolves. Don't want to sound like the old man attacking the windmill, but I don't think in say 20 years those distinct characters and products that you had a definite major part in will still be looked back on as, like, I couldn't tell you about the poster from one premium live event pay-per-view to another because it's basically all the same.
Yeah. Whereas we brainstormed and came up with themes and visuals and catchphrases and things that would be marketed to not only market that event, but the merchandise and the video games. So everything, every event was a prepackaged piece of entertainment. So it had its own look, its own feel, and as well as the characters, they were a package, and again, the colors and all that was missing from now it's just guys just dressing in athletic gear and maybe some leather and I don't know but it's not the same. That's unfortunate.
You actually reminded me of something I seen yesterday, and just when you were talking there, it's a list. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it on my phone, of the Royal Rumble logos from the start until now. And if you look at the last 5, they're different, but they're the same. Let me just see if I can get that in there. Maybe it's a bit too bright.
Stacked,
yeah,
yep.
There's a good one. Yeah, there's a good angle.
Wow, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, but they just kind of deteriorate as time goes on, I think.
Right, they deteriorate. Yeah, I remember the chrome one. Some of them are just hard to reproduce. Like they're hard to put on a ring skirt or something, or to make that digital. So yeah, definitely it makes sense. With all logos are doing that now. Everything's getting much more simplified. You're just getting typography without, a lot of icons and that sort of thing. Keeping it simple.
One of the last questions, because we've burned through this hour as well, and we're definitely going to have you back to discuss further matters. And if you can dig up your memorabilia, that'll be
show and tell. That's what we'll call it.
We can do a show and tell.
That's perfect. Wanted to see if, given what we've discussed about the way the business has evolved, do you think there's a potentiality when we're talking about the intersection of digital media and technology and all the pressures that come to bear with that enhanced technology, the creativity seems to have lessened somewhat. And I guess that could be argued as an opinion, but how do you see the future of creative services evolving based on, not only your experience, but I know you probably still have contacts in the business and what they deal with. How is technology maybe technology is responsible for some of the issues that we're talking about, but how does that department evolve and make such a strong contribution to the product?
Good question. I mean, again, I can't speak for them now. I don't know if they use any AI generated material in their campaigns, because again, when you start using AI, yeah, everything starts to look the same. That's a huge thing that we are dealing with as graphic designers. Is it's easy to get the product that you need. At the end of the day, but AI, everything is just, it's artificial. Everything looks the same. Everything looks very generic. I don't know. Maybe it's just a matter of, because they have so much volume to produce now, that you don't have the time to go in and customize everything. So again, that's the huge difference. And when we were doing pay-per-views, it was one a month. I don't even know how many they do. And they've got new networks. I'm sure, if anything, I would imagine they've simplified the process down, just because they have such high volume, that you can't have like a unique character development for everyone that runs into that ring, because that involves costuming, it involves logo development, it involves character development, storyline development. I'm guessing, I can't imagine what the roster today is compared to what it was back in the 90s and early 2000s, but that would be my guess as far as where we are with technology, because it's everything's so advanced and so incredibly capable, right? You can create anything. So I mean, they probably don't even have to do photo shoots with the talent. If they want to suspend someone from a bridge, you can do that in AI, or you can do that very simply. And I know, I've seen the work that they do. They're very, very capable, these designers. So I'm saying, my feeling is, because if it has, like you say, come more generic, I would say it's just a matter of efficiency, because they probably just can't keep up with the volume of all the shows that they have to produce, all the talent, all the merchandise. I mean, again, that would be my guess. And is it necessary? Although it is, because I'm listening to you guys say how much you miss that. So maybe that's something that they should hear and be aware of, and maybe they will hear it. But yeah, that would seem like that's what would probably bring them to that, is to probably just keep it simple and efficient, because they have a lot of work to do. I'm sure they work their butts off.
I'm seeing it here in Ireland, and you probably see it, Jack, in the promotions you go to as well, that it still exists at an independent level. And maybe when you go into the machine, then some of that gets stripped back from you, maybe. I don't know. Story for another day.
Yeah.
One of those things to ponder. Well, Debra, I wanted to also thank you again for this discussion.